Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic: lawyers of Reddit. What was the best gotcha moment you ever experienced? I acted for a plumber who ripped up a tile floor to replace a pipe. He installed new tile on top but warned the owners not to walk on it for 48 hours. He emphasized not to let their kids or their dogs walk on it either. They walked on it but alleged the defects were caused by improper install. We had an expert do a report which confirmed that it was consistent with proper installation but people walking on it too soon. Crazy homeowners still went to trial on it. In their evidence disclosure they included a series of pictures. One of the pictures had in the foreground a tile that was tilted upwards. The background very clearly showed a dog's paw pressing down on the other end of the tile. That wasn't so much an I got them situation as they got themselves. Old boss of mine went through something similar. Machined a part for this guy, coating vendor took forever and a day to apply the coating required, overnighted it back. Was on the verge of being late when it was delivered. Boss tells the guy to give the part 4-5 days for said coating to cure before install, because while it was solid enough to not put fingerprints in, it was still soft. This was an email with the coating vendor CC'd. This was on a Monday. Wednesday rolls around. Dude calls up having a conniption about the coating failing and he's gonna get his money back in court yada yada. Boss says fuck you, sue me. They go to court. Guy's first mistake was suing for the cost of the entire part plus coating, which was like $2,500. This makes no sense because the part itself was fine and made completely to the print, coating was junk. This dumb motherfucker presents pictures with dates of the part. Coating failed, mounted to the mating part the same day my boss had emailed him and said wait a few days. Boss had printout of said email, which was sent 5 hours before UPS gave notification of the part being delivered. Judge tossed it, boss brought back ice cream, was a good day. That is kind of BS. Coating vendor shouldn't be sending out parts with uncued coating. They were late getting their work done and then expect the buyer to sit there and absorb the cost of double handling and waiting past their deadline to install. Basically the coating vendor delivered a defective part. I had client whose 60 Kelvin car was ruined by a shop that put in the wrong oil. We couldn't prove it at first, the engine blew up, oil leaked out and evidence was lost. I subpoenaed their bank records, figured out they bought their oil from Costco. Called Costco and got their prices for the last 2 years. I then worked out the amounts they were spending, did some backhand math, and showed based on the values it was impossible they had ever bought the right oil. They settled in full immediately. You gotta admit, it is the most satisfying thing when the opposition caves in immediately when you prove what they are saying is impossible. I'd hire you in a heartbeat. Damn. Told this story a few years back, but everything old is new again. My brother is a divorce attorney. His most memorable case, he was representing a guy in a divorce custody battle who was accused of horrific child abuse. Very graphic, very detailed depositions from the young kids against daddy. Things look grim. Then my brother notices the deposition transcript, done by social workers under oath, contains a question at the end from one of the kids: did I hit my marks? My brother had previously tried to make it as an actor in Hollywood right out of high school, failing miserably, and decided to go into law, an altogether different form of acting. He wonders how little kids know about acting jargon. Subpoenas the wife's personal checking account during discovery, sure enough, acting lessons. Deposes an extremely sketchy acting coach, and panicked coach quickly coughs up DVDs of practice interrogations with the kids, hours of coaching the kids on exactly what imaginary things to say about daddy. He says it was his one and only Perry Mason moment in 20+ years of practice, and dad got sole custody of the kids. Holy shit, fake accusations of serious crimes make my blood boil. The wife could have put her ex in prison for years over something he didn't do. Edit, blood, not mood. Imagine being wrongfully imprisoned for the crime of molesting your own children. I can't even imagine the amount of rage. Had a client accused of leading the cops on a high-speed chase. The cop on the stand estimated he was going 90 miles per hour, but never actually clocked him. Then the cop identified where the chase started with me, and where it ended. It lasted about 2 miles. Then we went through his log of when it started and when it ended. About 3.5 minutes. Once you walk through the math on that, the average speed of this chase was 35 miles per hour. Client got acquitted really quickly after that. When that math problem in 6th grade about how fast the car was going depending on its speed and distance traveled actually matters. Edit, thanks for Silver. I would have some questions for the cops were I the judge on that case. Namely, does their car have a speedometer? Does it work properly? Do you know your numbers? Have you taken any drugs recently? Things like that. Edit, cheers to whoever gave me Silver. So the cop did 90 miles per hour to catch up with client and decided to call it a high-speed pursuit. 'Cause that's what it's sounding like. A friend of mine got pulled over once. I was in the car with him. When the cop approached us, he said, "Do you know how fast you were going?" I had to go 70 to catch up. My only thought was, how does that matter? It's not like he'd catch up by matching our speed. I'm still confused by that interaction. Oh man, here's another one. I had a DUI case that seemed pretty standard. Police report said that they saw a car with a headlight out leaving a BWW parking lot. He stopped him, the guy failed road signs and blew a 09. I have a meeting with the kid to get his side of the story. My client was drinking in a BWW watching some MMA fight, so it was super packed. Sometimes for events like this, police officers hang out inside to make sure no one gets in fights, steals shit, etc. Anyway, my client was flirting with the bartender, and she asked him to go home with her when she got off. He, being a man of about 25, says yes. She says she'll drive him, and he tells her okay, but that he had to grab his cell phone charger out of his car. He walks out of BWW to do so and the cop followed him out. It was pouring, so instead of just opening his door and reaching for his charger, client gets in the car to rummage through his glove box for it. When he steps out, the cop is standing there and demands for him to do road sides, then hits him with DUI. We set for trial. At the motions hearing, I asked the cop if he'd followed my client out of BWW. He said no, that he'd been patrolling in his car. He said he had no idea who was in the car when he approached it. He swore the car was on. So at trial, I let him tell his story. I made him confirm to the jury that he was in his car doing routine patrol. He was never inside BWW. He didn't follow my client to his car to entrap him into a DUI. Then I played the video from inside BWW clearly showing the cop watch my client get up from the bar and follow him out. Not fucking guilty. Edit, wow. So this blew up. I'm gonna answer a couple FAQ. I showed the prosecutor the video morning of trial. There were a few cops in and out of BWW throughout the day. He said the quality wasn't good enough to prove it was the same cop. He argued this to the jury. Obviously, the jury didn't buy that shit. The cop didn't see the video. I had to authenticate it through the guy from BWW who gave it to me, so it played after the cop had already left the stand. I basically just made him reconfirm his statement and let him go. Then argued in closing that he's a lying liar. The cops at least let my client leave his car in the lot, so he just went and got it in the morning. They took him to jail to do the breath test, and because it was his first, they didn't book him. The bartender came and picked him up from jail. They fucked. She confirmed his side of the story. I read BWW as BMW and was very confused. Buffalo Wild Wings. What happened to the cop? I'm not optimistic, but ideally he wouldn't be in law enforcement anymore. Laughing in police union. That thin blue line you always hear about. That's the name of the police union. Don't worry, the cop's fine. Desk duty for a week, then back on the street. His promotion was put off until he was able to illegitimately arrest a few dozen other innocent people. I was suing a landlord who failed to make serious repairs in order to force the tenant out. The hard part is proving bad intent instead of mere idiocy, so you get higher damages. Code enforcement was involved, so I request those records. The landlord left a voicemail to the enforcement department saying to hold off on the fines, they will make the repairs as soon as the tenant is forced out. That was an easy case. Some crap like this happened to my dad. Landlord refused to make repairs, washer was busted, garbage disposal was leaking and forced floorboards to warp. My dad moved and wanted his deposit. They would give it to him. He took them to court. He took pictures before he left and kept all texts from them. They walked themselves into a corner with everything they said. My dad was prepared for every claim. Eventually the judge told my dad he could fight it until the end and get his whole deposit, or the landlord could give most of it now and it would be over. He took the deal because he didn't have the time for court, and the look of anger and defeat on the landlord's face was too satisfying. It's 3 years later and the repairs still haven't been made in the apartment. Edit, spelling. Also, he heard about the lack of repairs from his old neighbor who still lives there. I never understand these kinds of situations. The cost of repairs can't amount to more than a few $100s at first. The warped boards might push that up over 1 Kelvin, but I'd be surprised if those repairs exceeded 2 Kelvin. They easily spent more than that in court.